Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method podcast with your host, Robert Polenik. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2301, and it features random questions asked by you, the listener. Yes. So if you would like to submit a question for this podcast, you can do so on our website, which is www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. You can also reach out on social media. We're on Instagram and YouTube. You can find us under the name C3 Method and send us a message or any kind of questions there as well. So lots of ways to get in touch. I hope however you do it, that you do it. And if you ask a question, I'll make sure I cover it in these Q&A videos. Okay, awesome. Let's get into this week's questions. The first question we have is nutrition. I don't track my food, but I am mindful of eating clean. And I often have to remind myself to eat when I'm busy with work and taking care of my kids. But yet I am overweight. I don't understand how I can be overweight if I don't overeat. My doctor told me to cut back on sugary and processed foods, but I truly don't eat much, so I don't believe I have much to cut back from. I'm stuck as to what to do to help with fat loss. Okay, this is unfortunately very common. The 3 categories that I kind of explain that people come to me when they're looking for reasons why they're overweight is the most common reason that people think why they have more body fat than they want is from overeating. That's actually only one of the 3. I put 2 fingers up. So one of the 3 reasons is overeating. That's actually the least common reason. I guess the second common reason. There you go. The most common reason is actually inconsistent eating. I'll explain that in a second. The third is actually undereating. Now, how in the world can undereating make somebody have more body fat than they want? But it does happen. I do work with people who are anorexic and bulimic. In their case, what they'll find is they've been chronically undereating. Their metabolism has reduced to a snail's pace. So their body is burning very little calories at rest. And then also over time, their body starts to catabolize or break down or eat essentially their muscle tissue. The weight that they lose over time becomes increasingly higher percentage of muscle tissue. So what ends up happening is they might have gotten into the anorexic and bulimic behaviors from being overweight. It's often also a form of control. They're having some stress and chaos in life, and controlling their food in this extreme way gives them a sense of control over their environment. But if they're coming from a place where they had more body fat than what they wanted, when they first restricted their food, they would have lost body fat and very minimal muscle tissue. However, the restriction is chronic over multiple months and often multiple years. The percentage of weight being lost, that is fat versus muscle, becomes increasingly more muscle. They eventually get into this state of being skinny fat, where they're very light, like their body weight is very low. And you can likely see at that point, like their face is very sunken in. You might be able to see the bones in their arms, their ribs. You're going to be able to see the lack of muscle. However, what you often won't see that doesn't show when we're in regular clothes is that they might still have some fatty deposits and loose skin on their inner thighs, maybe their glutes, like their cheeks, butt cheeks are hanging down and soft and mushy. Maybe they have a little extra skin in their belly area. Maybe their armpits they don't like. They're going to have certain areas in which the body has catabolized more and more muscle, but it hasn't gotten rid of those last little bits of fat. So they'll continue to restrict, and wonder why that last little bit of fat doesn't go away. The main reason why is because if it did, all their organs would have absolutely no fuel and they would shut down and die. So chronic anorexia and bulimia leads to a ton of muscle tissue loss. It then can lead to organ tissue loss, and they become often really bad health and sometimes need to be kind of put into hospitals to help take care of themselves. But that is a very elaborate and probably long-winded answer as to how undereating can still leave somebody feeling as though they have more body fat than they want. That was really long-winded. I probably didn't need to go into all that, but there you go. Now, the other reason, like I said, was inconsistent eating. This is where most people fall in the category of, and why they struggle to lose more body fat is they undereat during the day, they overeat at night. That's pretty much the routine. Another way of saying it is when they're super busy, they don't really eat much, and then when they're not busy, they eat too much. So what ends up happening is the degree of restriction, the degree of deficit, the amount that they're under eating when they're active becomes very extreme. It's extreme enough that the body says, hey, you know what? I can't just give up all of my body fat to fuel this time frame, because what happens when I have no body fat left? So if I have 100 units of body fat and you need 20 units every day, what am I going to do on the 6th day? What am I going to do when I run out of fat units? I will die. I have nothing to run anything with. So when we get into these extreme cases, extreme deficits, and the body's like, oh my gosh, this is too large of a deficit for me to just willingly give up all of my body fat. Now, at first, it might be willing to do that. Maybe you start with 10,000 units of body fat and you're only asking for 20. It's not going to care much, right? It's going to give that up. But as we go from 10,000 to 1,000 to 100 to only 10, as it gets less and less and less and less, that degree of what we're asking the body to give up becomes higher and higher and higher. It becomes more at risk in the body's perception. So it adjusts to account for that. It adjusts by reducing non-essential calorie expenditure, which would be an example of the rate that we grow our hair and our skin like replenishes and our nails grow. Things that don't necessarily keep us alive. The body allocates less and less and less calories to those things. That then also means that the amount of calories the body is burning, and another way of saying that is our metabolism, decreases. So over time, if we chronically undereat during the day, we get this situation in which the body feels too at risk to give up body fat. So it starts to use less calories to reduce how much body fat it would need to give up. Then, when we overeat at night, we have a momentary surplus. So even if you track calories in a 24-hour time period, and per 24 hours, it looks like you're actually at the right amount. If you don't eat during the day and you eat a whole bunch of food at night, that's going to create a momentary surplus. If we're not 100% accurate in controlling in how much we eat at the times that we do eat, then we're likely going to have excess. And the excess the body will store to replace fat that is being burned off because it felt at risk losing all that fat. However, it puts it back on in a body that has a lowered metabolism now. So we're putting fat back onto a body that won't burn it back off at the same rate. This is why slowly over several months, we might gain 5, 10, or even 15 pounds. It's a slow accrual of weight because the metabolism is low. Those momentary surpluses might only be here or there, but if we're not 100% tracking our calories, that does happen. We do have momentary surpluses, so the body slowly puts that back on, but it puts it back on a body that isn't burning it off at the same rate it was burning it off before. Now, how does intermittent fasting work if people don't eat during the day and they eat everything at night? It's because they track what they eat at night. They know the exact amount of calories. They make sure that it's not too much or too little, so that way they can control the rate of weight change that they want. But if we're not tracking our calories in the evening, we're likely going to have some nights where maybe we actually are in a deficit. Maybe some nights we actually eat what we should have eaten, like the right amount, but then there's going to be a lot of nights where we probably overate. We had dinner, we ate till our bellies were full, we sat on the couch just an hour or two later and we're like, hey, would you like a little ice cream? Would you like a glass of wine? Would you like a little bit of this? And we tend to have a little extra snack. So when we don't track what we do, and we don't have control over what we do, awareness of what we're doing, we're likely having momentary surpluses. And that's coming after the daytime when we had extreme deficit. So that is the number one reason why most people have more body fat than what they want. And it's probably often why you're not obese, like you're not living the 600 pound my life, TV show on Lifetime or whatever it is. So you're just overweight, like you just have a little more belly fat. So as one of my favorite comedians, Kevin James, says, your belly jiggles when you brush your teeth. So if you're in that situation, it's likely that you're overweight or you have too much fat compared to what you want from inconsistent eating. And that is likely what is happening with this person is they say that they're not eating much. And they say that they're not eating much during the day when they're busy with working with their kids. So that's probably that under eating during the day moment. But then at night, we're likely making up those calories but not tracking those calories. So we do have those momentary surpluses. If the person was overweight from simply overeating, then restriction of calories, no matter what the hell they came from, no matter what you restricted, it wouldn't matter, would help. So the doctor's advice of reducing sugary food and processed foods, sure, they could name whatever the hell they want. Don't eat things that are green. Yeah, whatever, just name anything. And if it causes a caloric reduction, it would have helped. But if the person isn't overly fat from overeating, if it's from inconsistent eating, then telling a person to restrict more food is not going to help at all. It might actually make the daytime deficit worse. Then at night, maybe they're not going to have a couple foods that they really enjoy that calms them down and soothes their emotions. So instead, they try to eat this nasty, healthy stuff that they don't like. And then they still eat the crap after that because they didn't get the fun stuff, the stuff they really wanted. And often they actually end up overeating. So that advice is not really good. If anybody gives somebody nutrition advice, you want to have an understanding of why are they overweight in the first place, so that way the advice you give is actually of any value and actually doesn't hurt them. So I really cannot stand when people give advice without understanding the person's background. You're usually doing more harm than good. Even if what you told them to do doesn't hurt them right away, it won't work. That confuses them. They feel even more lost. They get more depressed, and that makes things worse. So don't give advice if you don't know the person's background, if you don't know why they're overweight. There you go. To the one or two people that would be watching this that might actually give a crap, there you go. So it's sad how often I have to explain to clients that their doctors are not nutritionists and the doctors should not give advice. So I'm usually very bummed and disappointed when doctors give advice if they don't take the time to get to learn the person's nutritional background and history and actually personalize that advice. If it's just, I tell all my patients, avoid sugar and processed foods. That's a horrible, horrible thing to say because you don't know if that's actually going to help them or not. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. But that is a very long-winded answer as to why this person feels as though they're not eating much, but yet they're overweight. We want to reduce the degree of deficit that we're having during the day. And then that allows us usually to come into the evening not so ravenous and hungry. And then that usually brings down our calories in the evening and makes everything a lot better. So that is what I would recommend is pay more attention to eating breakfast, eating something at lunch, anything, doesn't matter what the hell it is, just eat more food than what you normally eat. So that way you're not as hungry at dinner and you eat less food at dinner. It balances things out throughout the day and you'll notice they're going to get leaner and start to lose some of that belly fat. Awesome. Okay. So we'll go into the next question. It is a training question. You train people for strength and also endurance sports. For strength, lifting weights is their sport. But for endurance, lifting weights helps their sport. How do you program lifting weights differently for one versus the other when for one the sport is lifting, but for the other, lifting can actually be detrimental if done too much? Oof, okay. Definitely some truth. So if we look at strength sports, and they're saying lifting weights is their sport. So I would assume they're referring to powerlifting, or it could be CrossFit, could be strongman competitions, Olympic weightlifting, now there's high rocks and all the other crazy things. So if somebody's doing a lifting-based sport where they lift weights for their sport, that's what they're referring to. So lifting weights would make sense because if your sport's kicking a ball, you probably should kick a ball. If your sport is lifting weights, you probably need to lift weights. And then when they're talking about endurance athletes, If we look at people who do, like, say, triathlons, marathons, oh my gosh, there's a billion endurance sports, cycling. I work with people who do swimming, like Olympic level swimming, runners, a whole bunch of other categories of people. So lifting in those type of sports is what we do to prevent injury and improve performance, but it isn't actually their sport. So that's the context of the question that I'm assuming. So that's what I'm going to go with is what was the question? How do I program weights differently? In general, if a person's sport is lifting weights, they're going to be lifting weights to a higher, like usually a higher frequency and higher volume. And then if a person is an endurance sport or any activity where lifting is just supplemental to what they want to do, then it's usually going to be lower frequency and lower volume. That's pretty general there, and you might have already known that, so I don't know if that's helpful. In the endurance category, what we're going to focus on is mobility, joint support, and then any specific muscular strength related to what they do. So for example, if somebody is a swimmer, we want to definitely work on upper back and shoulder development. We want to work on core strength. Their hip mobility, like for lateral movements, isn't really going to be useful. So we're not going to maybe necessarily focus on that. So endurance sports, I would make it very personal to whatever their sport is. But typically the order of what we look for is mobility. So if we're doing anything with weights, whether it's body weight or actually additional loaded weight resistance, external resistance loads, whether that's dumbbells, kettlebells, bands, or whatever. We're going to be doing it to improve mobility and then strengthen connective tissue and joint support. Meaning if there's an imbalance in, say, quadriceps versus hamstrings, we want to do enough lifting of weights to balance out the strength of that. So we want to strengthen and balance everything around the joints. That will also help reduce stress on connective tissue. If their muscle tissue can absorb more of the stressful forces, that would be great. So that's going to be generally our focus is mobility, joint and connective tissue health, and then maybe we work on explosiveness. So I've worked with BMX, like Olympic level BMX riders. So we might do some explosive activities and that gets them to be more explosive for their sport. So after mobility and joint strength, it's then really personalized to what that person needs. Baseball pitcher, I know it's not an endurance sport, but I've worked with Major League Baseball pitchers, and we'll do a lot of hip strength, core rotational, core strength. The upper body, we're really just going to leave alone and just make sure they have good mobility. We don't want them to get jacked and super huge muscles in their upper body. That would make things way worse. So everything after mobility and joint support is really personal. If a person's sport is lifting weights, it's still the same order: mobility, joint strength and support, and then it's again personal to whatever they need, but they're likely going to end up doing more of it. So it'll be more frequent during the week, more total volume, probably heavier, aggressive movements. Maybe for endurance athletes, if I'm doing a squat, I might choose a box squat. Maybe that's safe enough, stimulus enough to strengthen the lower body, build some explosive power, but it's a little safer because they have the box to kind of stop their depth. We don't have to worry about going too low. We don't even have to necessarily go to parallel at all. Whereas if somebody's a powerlifter, their sport is lifting weights, and they're judged based on going to parallel, then hell yes, we've got to train to parallel. So that is, I guess, the difference is the similarity is mobility and joint support. And then the difference is going to be the frequency that they lift the weights and the volume that they lift the weights. But again, a similarity is everything is personalized to whatever their sport or activity or demands are. So hopefully that would be an answer enough. When you say how much might be be detrimental, that's really an individual basis as well. So I can't say for quadriceps you should do 10 working sets per week. Hamstrings should be 12 working sets per week. It depends on who the person is and what their goals are and what their sport is and all these things. So everything is 100% personalized. So that's why I do one-on-one coaching as the overwhelming majority of what I do, is I personalize everything. That's what I love to do, and that's the fun that I have, and that's why people come to me, is they might have tried mass programming, bulk programs, the online programs and all that other stuff, and they never quite got what they needed. So we do personalized programming, and that's the benefit, is everything gets 100% personalized to their needs. Cool. Okay, so hopefully that answered it. If it didn't, let me know, follow up with another question, and I'll make sure I answer you. If not, also include it in next week's video. Okay, next question we have is mindset. I always love working out once I'm working out, but I struggle to get myself motivated for my workouts. Is this normal? How can I increase my motivation so I struggle less with getting my workouts started? Ooh, okay. A couple things is if you notice that you like training and you like working out, but you have to, it's a struggle to get going, and then once you're doing it, you enjoy it. Just continue to remind yourself of that. So I have done this before on my phone. I'll put like my home screen, like a little note reminder that says like, you love this, or you'll be happy once you started. Those are little things that are nice, and I would renew that. Whatever message you do, or it's an image or a motivational quote, renew it every single week. Otherwise it gets stale and it doesn't have that same hit. And then often in the process of finding the next one you want, it really kind of motivates you and kind of lights that fire again. So use reminders of the fact that you actually enjoy working out, but renew that reminder every week. Another thing is to make sure you're actually fed well and hydrated well going into the workout. Our bodies don't like stress, believe it or not. And exercise is stressful. Even if it's a good stress, even if it's a stress you like, it's still stressful. The body sees it as calories and energy that it has to exert. There's maybe you're hot and you're sweaty and you don't actually like that part of it. Maybe you're always tired afterwards. There's a whole bunch of things that could be what the body doesn't like about it. So maybe your overall perception is you enjoy it because we get the endorphin and adrenaline rush, and there's a lot of positives, but there's likely some things the body doesn't like. And in general, it has to exert energy to exercise. If it doesn't feel that it's in an optimal or even a decent state, if it's underfed, if it's underhydrated, the body's going to say, screw that, go eat some food, go drink something, or go lay on the couch. Or if you work out in the morning, you'll hit the snooze button 17 times and you'll miss your time to work out. So if we take better care of ourselves leading into the workout, nutrition and hydration wise mostly, that's going to allow your body to argue less against the introduction of more stress. If you come into the moment of deciding to work out not stressed, well, then the body's not going to worry about more stress, right? But if you're super stressed, low food, low hydration, maybe you have a lot of stress going on at home, maybe a lot of stress going on at work, maybe your sleep quality is crap, so that's something we want to look at. But in general, we want to make sure that our physical state is in as good of a place as we can make it. So that way, getting started into the workout doesn't seem so negative for the body, so it doesn't fight us in that process. And then the last little tip is to do it as early in the day as you can. We tend to make our best decisions at the beginning of the day. So there's a thing called decision fatigue. And as you make more decisions as you go through the day, we tend to make worse and worse decisions. We base our decisions more on convenience and lower stress rather than on what's best for us. So if we want to include exercise and working out, and we know it's good for us, but it's a struggle and it's stressful, the earlier in the day that we would make the decision to work out or not, the better. Maybe you're not a super morning person, that's fine. Try to do it midday, or if you have to do it after work, don't go home first. Drive directly to the gym and then go home. So pack your gym clothes, pack what you need in the morning, go to the gym after work before you go home, because if you go home, you're probably not going to go to the gym. But the earlier in the day, the better. 99.9% of people are going to do much better if they just get up earlier. That involves you going to bed earlier. That involves a better bedtime, nighttime routine, but it's worth it. Try to get into bed a little bit earlier. Try to take care of all those things. Bring noise down, good temperature, like dark room, all the good stuff. You can look up a lot of things on sleep health. I've read, oh my gosh, a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts about sleep health. Sleep quality is something I work with clients all the time. So we want to always be looking at, I can't always sleep more, but can I sleep better? So if we get better sleep, better nutrition, better hydration, and we try to work out earlier in the day, you'll often find that it'll be easier for you to get started into your workouts. So hopefully those are some things you can look into and tips that might help. Cool. Then the last question we have for today is a business question. You've mentioned that you started your career training clients in person, but now you work with clients exclusively virtually. How has that changed your work-life balance? Do you miss training clients in person? Woof. Yes, so now I am in a very fortunate and blessed place in business to where I do work with clients virtually. That's the way I do it now. It's a much better work-life balance. When I started training people, I was 16. I'm 41 now. And I trained people, through my teens and 20s as I was going to school. I had various jobs at different gyms and just freelance, kind of did it wherever I could and worked with people in person at different places. And then at that time, I was still working with people virtually in a sense where I would email somebody to work out in between the times we could meet. But everyone I worked with was somebody that I had met in person, on a semi-regular basis. Then when I opened the gym, like our public gym, I opened it in 2011. I did in-person training exclusively. I was training people 50 hours a week, if not more than that. It destroyed me, crazy time, but it paid for the gym, paid off all the equipment, gave me a good life when I could live it. So it was very busy. And unfortunately, in personal training world, you have to train people when it's convenient for them to do that. At first, that would be super early in the morning or super late. So my life schedule was the opposite of pretty much everybody else's schedule. I didn't really like that. I wasn't much of a morning person at that time. I've learned to be a morning person, but I wasn't much of a morning person at that time. And usually by the end of the day, I was dead tired, and I still did it, but it was pretty rough. So then I started switching to clients who could come during the day. I was lucky enough and blessed enough that I was full with clients, so I could start to say, hey, you know what, I've been meeting people at 5 a.m., but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not meeting anybody till 7. And then eventually I was like, 7's now too early. I don't want to meet anybody till 8 or 9. So I eventually switched from the extremities of time frames to only between, say, like 9 to 5. And I filled up my roster and did well with that. However, that ended up having a cap in the amount of people that I could work with. So if I train 8 hours a day and I do 1-hour sessions, I can only help 8 people a day. I started to have more requests from people, and I was like, well, I can't just magically make more time. How can I help more people? And in return, help myself. 8 people in one day is a long freaking day, and there's a money cap on that. How am I going to grow the business in a way in which it can continue to build more income for me, but also reduce my craziness and stress and maybe make more time for myself to eat and maybe exercise? So I started taking on online clients, like clients where, like I remember the very first online client I had was a friend of one of my in-person clients. And they lived in California. I live near Charlotte, North Carolina, so I wasn't going to be able to work with them in person. So we started just communicating via email. She did great. She eventually became a trainer herself, and she eventually got a natural pro card, I believe in figure. So that was super fun and awesome. That was my first virtual client that I got to a pro card. So that was super fun, and that's in aesthetic sports. So they get on stage and look all muscly and pretty and everything. So that was super fun. And that opened the door then to, a friend of hers needed some help, and then he got a natural pro card, and then another friend, another friend, another friend. And it started building up to where I was like, hey, you know what? With 1 hour of time, instead of training one person face to face, I might be able to write enough programs and do email communication to 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So now I can help more people. And 1 hour divided among 6 people's income, I can make more money out of 1 hour divided by one person's income. So I was able to help more people and make more money by switching to virtual. And then as that grew, it grew more and more and more and more and more to the option to then, I didn't have to take any in-person clients if I didn't want to. And at that point, I've been doing it. I ended up closing the public gym in 2023, and I started training people in person, I think when it was like, it would have been like 1998. So it's plenty long enough, like 20 some years. So I'm good. So I thought, it was definitely a good time to move to doing virtual. And then the other benefit was I met my now wife at around the time that the virtual business was taking off more and more and more. And I was like, well, this would be pretty cool. I can get to know her more. I can share time with her. And that was also whenever the world shut down in 2020 and she was able to work remotely, like work from home with her job. So then I was like, well, what the hell? I want to be home too. I want to spend more time with her. So switching to virtual just made more sense. And that has been the transition as to why I work with people exclusively virtually now. And I got probably way off track. So how did that change your work-life balance? Immensely, absolutely immensely. I love helping people, so I still get to do that, but I also get to do it now where it doesn't take so much from me in order to help people. So much better work-life balance. I get to work whenever it fits my schedule best. I get to share time with my wife Meredith whenever that fits her schedule best. So this is by far the best work-life balance I've ever had in my entire life. And I've worked some crazy hours and did some crazy things to pay the bills over the years. So very blessed, very grateful. And then the last question there they had was, do you miss training clients in person? It is super fun. I really do enjoy getting to train with people or train a person as a trainer role in person. It's just fun. You get to see how they move. You get to problem solve in that moment. There's a lot of just like spontaneity to the process that is super cool, super fun. So I do really enjoy it. I don't want to go back to doing it full time, but it is something I do enjoy. Do I miss it? Yes and no. I could do it anytime I want. People ask, I'm very blessed, so grateful. I came across kind of cocky. If I wanted to train people in person, I do have that option. There are people who would tick me up if I were to hit them up and say, hey, do you want to do a training session in person? They would say, hell yes. So I'm very blessed and grateful for that. So I could do it if and whenever I wanted to, but it's also fun now just to do it for fun and maybe make some YouTube video content or, help a client if they were in need and they live close by. So it's nice now that I get to do it as an option if and whenever I want to. So I don't miss it because I do have the option to do it anytime I want, but it is something I enjoy. It just didn't fit the way in which I want my life to be right now. Okay, that was a lot about me. So I want to finish this in a way that maybe the person who asked could use the information. If you're a trainer, and that's why you're asking, and if you're deciding, should I work with people in person or virtually, both, absolutely 100% both. Fill your schedule. However many hours you have available to work with people, say yes until you fill those hours. And that's a yes with some people in person, yes with some people online, just yes, until you fill your spots. And then what you can start to say is, okay, out of all these experiences, which do I like the most? Are there people I meet only in person? Are there people I do a hybrid with? Are there people I only do virtual? Out of these combinations, what do I enjoy the most? What do I get the most reward from? How do I help more people? How do I make more money? How do I have a better work-life balance for myself? So the more variety of experiences you have, you can then better decipher which experience you want, and then you can build your business in that direction. So maybe you have a mix and you really enjoy in-person people, and maybe you're like, well, I want to be able to make more money, but he's right. If I only work with one person at a time, there's a cap on that. Well, maybe you start doing group classes. Maybe you start training 2 or 3 people at a time. Then maybe eventually you start doing group classes, and that's a great way to make more money, but still get that in-person connection. So just say yes until you fill your hours. Get the experience of different ways to do it, and then decipher out of those experiences which do you want to continue to pursue and develop your business in that direction. Awesome. Okay, so that was all of the questions that we're going to cover today. I had some people send other questions, but I just answered those directly. They didn't seem as great of questions for a podcast, so I definitely got them their answers. If you would like to submit questions for next week's podcast, you can do that on our website, which is c3method.com. And again, the 3 spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. You can also reach out. Our email is c3method@gmail.com. And then you can also go to Instagram and YouTube. You can find us and follow us under the name C3 Method and send a message there as well. However you want to send it, I hope you send it. Find a way so that way I can answer your question in next week's video. I appreciate you watching this week's video and listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, make sure you share it with other people. If you would like any help with coaching or any services that we might offer, you can learn more about what we do on our website, which is c3method.com. Okay, I think that's everything. So as always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.